Make theirs. When 35-year-old Jason Elridge arrived home on Thursday, January 9th, from his job in Charleston, West Virginia, he did what he normally did. He made dinner for his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and himself. Then the trio sat down to eat. It wasn't until afterwards, however, that they turned on the evening news and saw the main story. The tap water he'd used to fix his family's meal was poisoned. This actually happened and is not science fiction. This is where the world is headed unless we take charge, a moral and ecological imperative. We abuse, misuse, and take for granted the water on our planet. Our very success with water has allowed us to become water illiterate. But the golden age of water is rapidly coming to an end. The last century has conditioned us to think that water is naturally abundant, safe, and cheap. That it should be. That it will be. We're in for a big shock. We are in the middle of a water crisis already in the United States and around the world. The experts realize it. The Weather Channel already has a dedicated burning orange logo for its drought reports. But even in areas with serious water problems, most people don't seem to understand. We are entering a new era of water scarcity, not just in traditionally dry or hard-pressed places like the U.S. Southwest and the Middle East. Our freshwater supplies are currently badly polluted and rapidly diminishing in size. Water is one of the most essential elements of life on Earth, but nearly 1 billion people worldwide don't have access to safe drinking water, says UNICEF, the Children's and Emergency Relief Organization. And the waste and pollution that happens from the agricultural industry to manufacturing sectors is practically criminal. But that's not the only problem. Freedom Industries, the company responsible for the enormously damaging chemical spill, leaving people such as Jason Elridge without water for over 6 days in West Virginia, managed to escape the oversight of not only West Virginia's Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, but also the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. Consensus has grown around the idea that Freedom Industries chemicals were not considered, quote, a hazardous material, DEP cabinet member Randy Huffman told the Associated Press. So, quote, it flew under the radar, end quote. In fact, not much known about the chemical MCHM that spilled is known at all. The main problem was that Freedom avoided having to prove that it had designed a backup plan if its chemicals breached the porous wall surrounding its toxic containment units and seeped into the ground. Lack of worry about chemicals flowing into the river, in retrospect, seems ridiculous. But the big picture is that Freedom was just, quote, under the radar, end quote, and many other chemicals companies can just stay under the radar for a long time. Well, until the water starts to turn green. Companies like Duke Energy in North Carolina have a, quote, history of non-regulation due political favors, says Michael Bitzer. Most recently, and perhaps their biggest spill, was on February 2nd of this year when enough coal ash sludge to fill 73 Olympic-sized pools was released into the Dan River by one of their plants. According to water.org, 40% of the U.S. rivers and streams are too dangerous for fishing, swimming, and drinking, as are 46% of lakes due to massive toxic runoff from the industrial farms, intensive livestock operations, and the more than 1 billion pounds of industrial weed killer used throughout the country every year. Surprisingly, the industrial industry is not the only one to blame for this. Besides pollution, there's the issue of water as profit. The current chairman and former CEO of Nestle, the largest producer of food products in the world, believes that the answer to global water issues is privatization. Companies such as Coca-Cola and Nestle, which bottles suburban Michigan well water and calls it Poland Spring, suck up millions of gallons of water, leaving the public to suffer with any shortages. But Nestle chairman Peter Lefmath believes that, quote, access to water is not a public right, nor is it a human right. So if privatization is the answer, is this the company in which the public should place its trust? Not surprisingly, there is a huge gulf between the first world and the third world in water use. The average human needs 50 liters of water per day for drinking, cooking, and sanitation. The average North American uses over 600 liters per day. The average inhabitant of Africa uses 6 liters per day. These appalling disparities have rightly created a high demand for water equity from environmental advocates and a commitment for providing it to the 1.4 billion people living without it. However, many parts of the United States are also experiencing water shortages. In 2007, Lake Superior, the largest freshwater lake in North America, dropped to its lowest level in 80 years. Additionally, the water has receded more than 15 meters from the shoreline. Florida is also in trouble. In order to keep their lawns and golf courses freshly watered, the Sunshine State is sucking up water at such a rate that it has created thousands of sinkholes that devour anything: houses, cars, shopping malls, careless enough to build on them. California, currently in the midst of a severe drought, has a 20-year supply of fresh water left. New Mexico has a 10-year supply. Similarly, in the small Pakistani community of Batai Dilwan, a former village counselor says children are being sickened by filthy water. Who's to blame? He says it's because of bottled water maker Nestle, which dug a deep well that is depriving locals of potable water. Quote, "The water is not only very dirty, but the water level sank from 100 to 300 to 400 feet, Dilwan says. Sometimes people believe that water crises only happen in arid places like the Middle East, but really, it's happening in our own backyards. Some states like Arizona already ran out of water. They now have to import it from the Colorado River. But what happens if the Colorado River runs out of fresh water too? But how can we fix this? You first need to demand proper regulation of industry in your area and, the most obvious, conserve water in your own homes. Even the simplest thing of filling your own water bottle as opposed to grabbing a plastic bottle of water from companies like Nestle will help the planet and your wallet. Water expressions infuse our language: drained, high and dry, mainstream, but we don't really have much of a framework or language for talking about water itself. We aren't really talking about water. We're talking about our anxieties, our hopes, our sense of ourselves, refracted through water. We're talking about our vision of our community, about our livelihoods. As supplies disappear and populations soar, will our future wars be fought over this precious resource? Will governments and corporations continue to seek ownership and limit access to what has been declared a basic human right? How can we celebrate fresh water, appreciate it, and ensure both humans and ecosystems alike have enough of it? It should make you wonder, what would life be like without it? Thank you.